Welcome to the Best by the Worst. The best movies of all time, reviewed by the worst possible critics. If you don't believe us, keep listening to find out. Welcome back.
Barrett, it's been a hot minute.
Yeah.
By hot minute, I mean about 2 days.
Yeah.
As we're still playing catch up.
Yeah, we're going to try to do this again. What do we got? Deeds Brewing.
Deeds Brewing.
Oat Cream Juice Train. NEPA.
I do like Deeds Brewing, and we're definitely not sponsored by them. However, we are listening to offers.
Yeah, we could be sponsored by them.
We could be. We aren't, just to be clear for legal reasons, but we could be.
Right, we're just pouring beers into our glasses right now. That's why we have a long, awkward pause.
This looks thick.
Yes, it's come out pretty good.
Oh, very good. How you been, Barrett?
I've been good. Finished off the working week, and I'm keen to give this another go. The last one, I think, turned out fantastic.
Same here. Friday is done. Yeah. We're onto the weekend. So, recapping on the first episode, how do you think it went?
It went mostly good, apart from me apparently getting the year wrong that the movie won.
That's probably a good place to start. Should we clear that up?
Yeah. So I'm still a little bit confused. Alex has tried to explain it to me several times, and maybe I'm just too thick to understand. But I think the movie was made in 27. It won in 28. He tried to explain it to me based off current events. So
we'll try that again because Barrett's made a mess of it. So the first movie that we reviewed, last episode, Wings. So that movie was made in 1927, okay, but it won the award in 1928 because the Academy Awards, they review the previous year's movies the next year, if that makes sense. So kind of like a soccer season. Soccer season runs for 23-24. So it happens mostly in the year 23, but it concludes in the year 24.
Yeah. Well, it makes a lot of sense. It made more sense when you explained to me that Oppenheimer won this year, but it was made last year.
Exactly. That's a good way to put it. So Wings, the first movie, was made in 1927. But won in 28, so the winner was for a movie made in 1927, so we keep it at 1927. The next movie that we're reviewing today is the Broadway Melody, which won in 1929. That's when the award ceremony was on. But it was made in 1928.
Exactly.
So I think we just stick to the year it was actually made, knowing that's the year that it won, right?
Oh, now you've confused me even more.
Great start. So just to conclude, Wings was made in 1927, the first winner of the Academy Award for Best Picture.
Yes.
So we're calling it the 1927 winner.
All right, so this is the 1928 winner.
Yes.
Also, we should probably get out of the way that this is the Best by the Worst podcast. And
yes.
We are really living up to our name right now of the worst. All right? But maybe I should put a side note in here right now. We should potentially call this episode the Worst by the Worst.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Why is that, Barrett?
Well, this movie was difficult to watch. That's putting it...
and that's coming from the world's most optimistic movie viewer named Barrett.
Yeah, this is coming from someone who sat and watched every episode of Blue Heelers current day.
That is accurate.
If you don't know what that is, it's a terrible Australian police drama show that was filmed for all through the late 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah, I remember watching it when I was just a pup.
Yeah.
And the only other person in Australia that watched that was my granddad. And now Barrett.
Yeah.
So not only has he watched every episode of Blue Heelers, which almost no one would have heard about in this day and age, but you also watched, what's that with Tim the Tool Man?
Home Improvement.
Home Improvement.
That's a cult classic. Do not knock Home Improvement. I also, after finished that, watched his more current show, Last Man Standing. I watched all of
the
that
remake of Tim the Tool Man.
Anyways, back on track of what I was trying to say.
We're just saying that if Barrett has watched all that and enjoyed it, then this movie was particularly rough to watch if both of us didn't enjoy it.
Yeah. So the reason I said the worst by the worst was we had a look after seeing this movie and realizing, maybe it didn't have such strong and great qualities. I had a look on Rotten Tomatoes just to see where it rated, and it was the worst rated movie out of all of the winners.
Yeah, and I think that still came in at like 50%. So
40.
Oh, there you go. Not an
40%,
abysmal rating.
And
but
it got the little Rotten Tomato logo. It didn't even get the actual tomato. Yeah.
So it was the worst rated winner in terms of a Rotten Tomato critic rating and a user rating, right?
Yeah, and we've got the second worst coming up next week. So,
yes.
we won't go into that now.
There's some rough weeks ahead of us.
That's also coming up. So, as Alex said, the movie was called The Broadway Melody.
The Broadway Melody.
Broadway Melody. I've lost my tangent here a little bit. I was introducing us, and I've gone back to the movie title.
So I'll just go back into that just to help Barrett. So the Broadway Melody, which won? It beat other movies called Alibi, Hollywood Revue, or something like that, In Old Arizona, and The Patriot. All movies we also haven't watched and don't plan on watching.
No.
Because if this won out of those movies, it was slim pickings that year.
Yeah, we thought our first podcast was bad. This is the terrible start. So I'll finish trying to introduce us, and then we'll get back to the movie. So who are we? I'm Barrett. My co-host here is Alex. We're from Perth, Western Australia. What are we doing? We're reviewing every movie ever to have won Best Picture, starting at the beginning. Mm-hmm. All right, and if you've landed here, you're listening to episode 2. So you can stop right now and go back and listen to episode 1, which at this point is much better than this one.
You know what's throwing us off, Barrett? So we're currently recording this episode, not in Barrett's home, but in my home. And why is that, Barrett?
Apparently my dishwasher was too loud.
That and your mother-in-law was watching TV.
Yes, she's with us. She doesn't live with us because this is the second episode that she's featured in. She's just staying with us for just a couple of weeks. She does have her own home. All right?
Yeah. So, we thought we'd come to mine where the house was empty and record it here. So it's just thrown Barrett off a little bit, but we're back on track.
Let me get these last couple of points out. We're going to have spoilers. If you haven't got around to watching these movies, it's your own fault at this point. This movie, in 2025, goes to the public domain. It's not actually under copyright anymore. So
yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah. And we're going to try this episode is include a theme for the episode. And we're going to try and say sayings from each movie. All right. So what sayings do you have for us today, Alex?
Oh, I'm gonna roll them out organically and see if the listeners can pick the ones that we use, because they're pretty obvious.
Well, when you say a common term from the 1920s, it's probably going to stand out.
Yeah, these are terms that have definitely died. In fact, one of them I had to Google because I was trying to work out, truly what it means and where it originated from. It's so dead in terms of sayings that nothing came up on Google when I looked it up, and I really tried.
Yeah, well, all right. So, I'll summarize the movie quickly. I've got a bit of an intro here. So, as Alex said, 1928 winner, Broadway Melody. Film had a budget of $379,000. So, significantly less than the last movie we watched. I did bother to do the inflation conversion for you. 6.9 million in today's money.
Very modest.
Yeah, way less than, what was the last one? 34.5 million.
Yeah.
Way less. The basic plot of the movie is two sisters. They move to New York. I guess they're they get invited by their uncle to come.
Oh, yeah, Uncle Jed. So, just here's a very interesting character. So, Uncle Jed is, I'm not convinced they're real uncle. I don't know. To me, that wasn't clear. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. I think he has some kind of influence in New York, or at least lives there, and is guiding the two sisters a little bit. Maybe a real uncle. We'll call it a real uncle. He also has a wicked stutter. Watch him get anything out takes 20 times longer than it should. It's not addressed in the movie, and it really irritated me.
Maybe, but let me tell you.
That's probably one of the most interesting points for me.
Yeah, it's a fair point.
There was not much else going on in this movie. The two sisters end up in some sort of weird love triangle with this guy named Eddie. All right, so we'll go through that. The sisters' names were Hank and Queenie. So that was, Hank was short for, what was it?
I looked it up. Harriet. Yeah, so Hank is short for Harriet in old people time.
Ah, that clearly makes a lot of sense. Another interesting fact for you, Alex. This was really all I was supposed to include in the intro, but I did see one other interesting fact. It probably should be on my list because I wasn't able to get 5 things together because really nothing happened.
Yeah.
But did you know that the movie was filmed with a Technicolor sequence?
What does that mean?
All right, so they had Technicolor they couldn't film color at the time.
Yeah.
But they could put essentially coloured film. No, not film. That's the wrong word. Oh, it is film. Yeah, coloured film into a camera, and they would have 2 cameras, got 2 lenses running, filming red and green.
Yep.
All right, and then later on they introduced a 3rd camera that introduced blue. Is that the other primary colour?
Sure. Yep.
Is it yellow?
No, red,
green, and yellow.
red, green, blue, yellow.
No, I think there's only 3 primary colours.
We'll have to Google that.
Anyways, we don't know anything about that.
I'm going to give it a Google.
Essentially, they filmed one section of this movie in Technicolor. They only used red and green. So what is it? Red, green, and blue.
Yeah.
All right. So they only had red and green. So blue would have been the other one. So they did film a section of this movie in color. Alex has got a worried look on his face like he's fed me false information.
Okay. I don't know why there's so much conflicting information on this, but 3 primary colours are red, yellow, and blue. In the world of physics, though, so what I showed you, the primary colours of light is red, green, and blue. So technically you were right, but what you're trying to get out, maybe primary colours of light is what you're going for if it's like filming, right?
I have absolutely no idea.
So we'll just go with the primary colours and we'll let the listeners decide what those colours are.
Yeah. And look, we don't have an avenue for them to come back at us right now, so good luck.
Exactly.
Yeah. They did film a section of this movie in this Technicolor, but they lost it.
What?
It doesn't exist anymore.
Well, actually, you mentioned it. We watched it and there was no colour in it.
No, there was no colour. So they filmed this section in colour. It was released with the colour section, but somewhere along the years, about probably the same time that Paramount lost Wings, MGM appears to have lost this movie as well.
What were they doing back then? Were they sending these films on carrier pigeons?
I just presume they got to a point where they said, this movie's won Best Picture, straight over the shoulder.
Oh my God. Well, that's really frustrating because it's such a landmark moment we didn't even get to see it.
Yeah, no.
Oh God, that's annoying.
Yeah. Well, that's all I had for an intro, and I have very little in the way of notes for this, so I'm going to need you to carry this episode a little bit.
Mate, I've got plenty to say. This movie really frustrated me.
Right.
So
you take the lead for a moment, and I'll...
It's worth mentioning a couple of things. I've got an interesting point that you might not know. But also we watched this movie with another friend of ours, Mikey. So shout out to Mikey, who hopefully is listening. We were going to have him as a special guest because he was watching it with us, but he couldn't make it. But we also will be throwing in some special guests as we go along. It'll be good.
So if you're one of our friends and you want to participate in this, because at this point they're probably the only listeners we have.
Yes. Just let us know and we'll take it under consideration.
You do have a platform to contact us on. Everyone else, all our fans,
yes.
don't.
You all have us on Facebook and you have our phone number. Okay, so just to recap on the plot a little bit. I know you touched on it, but all right, setting the scene. So 2 sisters. The older sister is Hank or Harriet, but they call her Hank in the movie. The younger sister is Queenie. They've got a sister act that they want to make it big on in New York, so they kind of moved to New York with the idea of making it big in the that kind of theatre scene, right?
Yeah.
So their kind of way in is Hank, so the older sister, her boyfriend. His name's Eddie. He's really the only other main character in the movie. He's already in an act, quite a popular one on that sort of Broadway scene, whatever it is. And I can't remember what that act's called, but anyway. So they use him trying to get it in, and they do, to be part of that musical. So there's a few things I loved on that, but before I get into that, so that was the basic plot of the movie. I wanted to mention, so Hank, the older sister, she actually was also nominated for Best Actress in this movie. She didn't win, but she was nominated for Best Actress.
Yeah, well, maybe when we run out of movies, that's where we'll start next.
So yeah, thought that was a fun little fact. Okay, so how it starts in terms of them using Eddie as a bit of an in to get into that music scene. So Eddie, it's a bit of a sleazeball. We'll get that out the way and we'll get to the reasons why. But also, he kind of framed himself at the beginning of the movie to Hank as a big shot, is in this musical, he's running the show, he takes no shit. Almost instantaneously when the two girls get on set where Eddie's basically promised them a shoo-in role, they quickly find out that Eddie actually has no power or sway. He's a singer in there for sure, and he has an act, but he's not running the show. There's a group of older men in suits that are really running the show, and it's very obvious. And he's kind of begging them to let them in. Doesn't kind of work at the start. A few things happen, and the girls kind of get in, right? Definitely worth mentioning if we haven't. So, given the title of the movie, it kind of implies it, but this is a musical. So, actually, wasn't a huge amount of musical scenes, which was kind of good. I don't know, well, maybe kind of good, maybe kind of bad. The rest of the movie didn't help, but so it was the first musical to win the Best Picture award.
Yeah.
Right, which was cool. So that was another key fact. And also had dialogue in it. We should mention that because it's the first movie of these that had dialogue.
Yeah. I just want to add in another point there. So you sort of mentioned them going in and auditioning and trying to get in this show. The men in suits, who are kind of creepy men in suits. There's a lot of creepy men in this movie.
They're like almost in the shadows, right? I mean, they're there where everyone can see, but they stand in a circle. There's 3 or 4 of them. They're smoking. They're older. They're seedy, and they're making the decisions.
Yeah. So essentially, what is it? Hank is probably not going to get a spot in the movie because she's not pretty enough.
Yes, they did make that clear, didn't they?
But they say Queenie is pretty enough, so she could probably have a spot. And then Queenie begs for Hank to be included and says they'll both work for one salary.
I heard what you said about me. Please, couldn't you give the both of us at the same salary?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's kind of how it plays out. And they're both like attractive girls. Hank's like a lot shorter, I guess, and she's a bit older. Whereas Queenie is very much your stereotypical, tall, long legs, blonde. I actually looked her up a little bit because something we were doing as we were watching it, because we were fucking bored out of our mind, was working out if any one of these actors was still alive. Because what we're finding is, and this makes a lot of sense, I guess, is that every single person that we're watching when we're watching these movies are no longer with us. But a few of them had a really long life, actually, and almost were alive. I think the last person died in 2004 or something like that.
Yeah, it was relatively recent. Maybe not so recent.
Well, I mean, they were over 90 years old.
Yeah.
So we're looking that up. But actually, when I was looking up Queenie, so the younger sister, so obviously the more attractive one, apparently back in the day in the silent movie age, and then obviously morphed into dialogue and the rest of it, but that's kind of when she made her breakthrough. She was like an early sex symbol.
Really?
Yeah, as far as sex symbols go for back in the day, she was that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I didn't find that in my research, so I don't know what you were Googling.
Just the profile on Wikipedia.
Ah, yes, I'm sure. I'm sure you were in incognito mode when you were searching that.
No. But it's worth mentioning, as we mentioned in the previous podcast, that, we will keep a log of when we see nudity, just for, thorough research purposes, and none to be had here.
Yeah.
And that probably ties into the Hays Code that we mentioned in the previous episode.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah,
maybe early days. Oh, maybe too early for that, but possibly just didn't have nudity in it. We'll go with that.
It probably didn't need it, given the plot.
Didn't need it. No. Yep. So it was a musical, obviously, first one to win that. Great. Back to the plot. So Barrett. So we kind of touched on it. So they're now in this play with Eddie, and they're all participating in this play. The girls are super excited because they think they're now starting to make it, and this is going to lead to bigger things. Eddie feels good about himself because he got his girlfriend a role in there and the sister. But pretty early on, there was some weird vibes that we're getting from Eddie.
Yeah. So it kind of appeared that Eddie might not have only been interested in Hank.
Yeah, so we got pretty quickly early on that Queenie has, she's super young, and my guess is hasn't been in the picture for a little while. And the last time that Eddie has seen her, she was still, a younger girl, right? Not a woman. So when he sees her, he's kind of like shocked. Oh my goodness, this is Queenie. She's all grown up. And then very, very quickly we pick up on his mind's shifting from, this is Hank's little sister to, oh, this is Hank's little sister.
Yeah, I think he really just pictured her as like a really nice can of cream.
Cream in the can.
I gotta say, I got it wrong.
So, yes, many, many times they say, oh, it's the cream in the can. And I understand it to be like it's something good, like the real cream in the can. And that's one of the sayings in this movie that I can find no reference to. If anyone can explain that reference, please let us know, because I'm thrilled by it.
How are they going to let us know? We need to get some sort of social media off the ground. Just some avenue for them to contact us.
Yes. Cream in the can.
Cream in the can.
You were so close, Barrett.
I was pretty close. Anyways, so going on from there in the plot. Now, look, I struggled to keep up a bit, but essentially that first play that they're in, it wasn't panning out overly well. Is from what I sort of worked out what was going on. And then there's that moment where another actor falls off this like really high platform and injures herself.
Yes.
Yeah. And then I don't know if that's the same play or not, but then Queenie ends up taking a role in that play. And I think if I'm correct, that's a different play than the first one they started.
I think so. And look, it's pretty quick, pretty quickly early on. Queenie's the one getting these opportunities because she's the more attractive one. And, these older men in suits running the show, they're not even shy about it, as I guess they wouldn't be in the 20s. They're like, yep, she's the pretty one. Give her the part. Get her on screen. Get her to do this. Blah, blah, blah. So Queenie's starting to have a bigger breakthrough than Hank. And their little sister act show they're doing together is starting to now split apart.
Yeah. All right. So, around that same time, and I don't want to interrupt your points too much, but around that same time when Queenie takes on that new role, she meets a guy. No, she gets cornered by a guy. What's the right way to put this?
Flanked?
Flanked? She gets flanked by a gay guy.
He's definitely not gay.
He's definitely not gay, and his name is Jock.
Was it Jock?
Yeah, Jock.
Oh, okay, yep.
And he becomes absolutely obsessed with Queenie, right? To the point within moments it becomes creepy that he's essentially forcing himself on her in several different scenes.
Yes.
Yeah, so...
Yep, definitely that old school, just chasing after a girl, no means yes kind of mentality. It was pretty creepy.
Yeah, she quite clearly said no several times.
70 times, yep.
And he kept saying that as... I would like more.
All these things for you. Aren't you going to be nice to me?
Oh, Jock, let me go.
Why should I let you go?
Yes. And that kind of theme was playing out a lot. There's a lot of back and forth, her saying no, him trying to get her, eventually convinces her to go on a date, while, the older sister Hank and Eddie trying to tell her, don't go out with this guy, but for very different reasons, right? Hank's trying to protect her little sister, and Eddie's trying to protect
his interest in the little sister.
Yes, very well said. So that actually kind of really sums up the plot for the most part of the movie, that, they're trying to keep her away from Jock. Jock's chasing after her. She's starting to rebel as her fame picks up and starts to get more money and the rest of it. She's starting to go a bit rogue, I guess. And, it's breaking Hank apart. Eddie's doing everything he can to try and attract the sister. And then his efforts just escalate, right? So as she gets a bit more rogue and closer to Jock, Eddie just starts ramping it up.
Yeah, he really starts to become unhinged. That's the nicest way I could put it.
Yeah.
Most of the men in this movie become unhinged. And that was probably... Look, I don't want to come across the wrong way because I don't agree with it, but it was probably one of the most entertaining parts of the movie, was the sheer sexism and creepiness, and just really summed up of what that era was like for women.
Yeah, and there's a lot of scenes, probably definitely more with Eddie, when he's starting to try harder and harder, and initially she picks up on it eventually, and she's like, no, you're with Hank, and he's just not taking no for an answer. You know, I remember one particular scene really when he's really trying. He's basically blocked her from leaving in the apartment room or something, and he's just saying like, "I'm telling you, I love you. Like, you know, you can't go. We can do this." And he's just kind of grabbing her, and he's just like trying to kiss her, and she's like trying to pull away, and he's just having none of it.
It's you. Don't you know what I mean?
No, Hank!
Oh, Queenie,
Yeah, no, yeah.
So that back and forth happens a lot.
Yes.
Super creepy.
Yeah,
So
definitely creepy.
Eddie sleazebag, and then like that's really the plot, right?
Yeah.
But what surprises me is then towards like the final kind of act, it doesn't have the outcome that I expect. So
Yeah, what did you expect?
well, I was expecting. I guess this is, you know, modern cinema. What I think would happen normally is that he would get caught out trying to have his way with the younger sister. The older sister would find out, and, you know, Eddie would get his ass kicked and kicked out.
Yep.
Not what happened. In fact, the scene when I thought it was all going to come crumbling down like a house of cards, so just to picture it, Eddie's got Queenie, the younger sister, really holding her up against the wall next to the door of the apartment, trying to kiss her, and she's trying to resist. And then the older sister walks in, and like they kind of just like separate at the same time. You thinking surely she's seen that. She doesn't see it, and they play dumb like nothing happened. And I'm like, oh, okay, so it's not going to play out the way I thought. And I thought, okay, maybe a bit longer, and that'll happen. But it's not what happened, Barrett.
No.
What happened?
Don't know. Can't remember. This movie was so unmemorable. The only bits I remember towards the end of the movie was the party.
Oh, yeah?
They
Yep.
have a birthday party in the apartment, which
Yep.
I remember a fight between Eddie and Jock.
Oh, okay.
And that's the bits and pieces. I don't want to spoil the complete ending. What do you have? Come on, you've got something in you.
Okay, Barrett's suffering from another case of mush brain, so I'll fill in some of the gaps. Okay, so how it kind of plays out towards the end is basically how we describe the plot's the whole movie. There's not much to it, right? But towards the end of the movie now, Eddie's efforts have really escalated to try and win over Queenie without Hank knowing any of this, right? Hank's a mess because, you know, she's seeing her sister kind of fall apart. She's really like comforted by the fact that she has Eddie. Sorry, Hank, you really don't. And they kind of get into an argument, so this is Hank and Eddie, because Queenie's off with that guy again, and it's kind of hitting that climatic point where, you know, he needs to stop it. Hank's like, bring her back. And that's kind of when she picks up that Eddie likes her. Right?
Yeah.
There's a moment where, you know, Eddie's showing so much focus on Queenie and gonna go and knock that guy's lights out and win her back. Like the penny drops for her. Like I can actually, like, you could see the camera pans to her face and you can see her eyes open up and she's like, oh, hang on. He's not doing this to help me or help Queenie. He's doing this for him because he likes her, right? And then I think, oh, okay, here's where it's all going to fall down. And then she does something I didn't expect. But then I thought she was doing it to try and see if her hunch was correct and call him out on it. And she was basically saying, oh, you love her. You need to go and get her, you know?
Yeah.
And then he's kind of surprised by it, like, oh, she's picked up on it. And then it's like, oh, I shouldn't, no, rah, rah. And then she kind of forces him to do it, knowing that's what he wants, or at least assumes it's what he wants. And then he runs out the door to go and get her. And then she falls apart, right, emotionally. I'm like, oh, okay. The way I interpreted that was she was testing it to test her hunch because his interest seemed off, and then worked out she was right, and then fell apart emotionally because he just ran out the door to go and pick up her sister. And then I think, okay, well, what's going to happen next? Okay, so he goes to try and rescue Queenie from Jock, goes to this party where they're all at, and tries to fight Jock to get Queenie back.
Yeah, and I guess when he steps into fight, this is part of the movie I do remember, steps in, sort of challenges Jock to a fight. Jock isn't probably really interested to fight, I guess, at that point. But Eddie keeps pushing it, and Jock flattens him. Throws him through a door.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I can't stress enough how Eddie was like at the start trying to be portrayed as, you know, a big shot, you know, Broadway guy. He's really not. He's just in there. Yeah, he's got a part in it. And then when he's talking a big talk and I'm going to knock this guy's lights out, he's just not that guy. He just is not. And he gets flattened.
Yeah. So I guess like he's left lying on the ground. Queenie comes to pick him up.
Yep.
And then I guess she feels a little bit sorry for him at that point because he's been hurt.
Yep.
He's been trying the whole movie to stop Jock and Queenie being together. All right. So I guess like this fight scene kind of, at that moment, it kind of ends the Jock piece, right? I don't think we really see him too much from that point on.
No, because this is right at the end of the movie, right?
Yeah.
And just by the way, this beer, delicious. Well done, Deeds, bro.
Yeah. Not a sponsor.
Not a sponsor.
Could be.
Could be. So then at the end of the movie, they were thinking, okay, what happens next? And long story short, there's not really a lot that happens in there, but Eddie and Quinny end up together.
Yeah.
And they get married, and this all happens off scene. I can't remember where they went, but they're on their honeymoon. And
Well, they come back from their honeymoon.
they're coming back from the honeymoon, so the scene's set on Hank, but then they're describing with Uncle Jed, who's there too.
Yeah, he's just stuttering away.
Sorry, anyone with a stutter.
So I have to bleep that out.
Yeah. So they're describing how, they got married, they ran off together, and, she's like happy for him now, and that she's all cool with it now. I'm thinking, what do you mean? Like, Quinny, how could you do that to your sister? Hank, what do you mean it's okay, you're just going to be cool with it now? Your boyfriend ran off with your younger sister. What the fuck? And then they walk through the door at the honeymoon and everything's just fine and happy. And obviously, like, there's some awkwardness between Hank and Eddie. But the rest of them were like, yeah, cool, this is fine. This is fine now. It's not fine.
No, it's definitely not fine. And we do, I still don't really understand the ending. That is the ending of the movie, by the way.
Well, all that happens is that, Hank's now got like a new person, another lady, I'm not sure who she was, to be part of a new act that they have, and they're going to go and try and make their own thing in their own way. Whereas, I feel like Eddie and Quinny are going to more settle down and have more family vibes, right? That's how I took it. And that's the end of the movie.
Yeah. That brings me on to my next 2 points that I have here. Not much happened. That's my last 2 points of things I wanted to bring up. Genuinely, when I thought we were, talking about doing this episode, I thought we could just play 11 minutes of elevator music and call this episode done. Yeah. That was all that my brain could conceive.
Probably would have been more exciting too. There was not a lot happening here.
No. And I think a subsequence to this episode might be a little bit shorter than we anticipated.
Yes. But, and just the plot, that ending just wouldn't happen in modern days, right? At least I don't think it would.
No.
Not in the West.
Did you have any points that you wanted to talk about? We've summarised sort of the plot of the movie now at this point, but if you have any other points, I don't have anything else written down.
I think you said that well, Barrett. I think you did. Quite swell. Unlike the movie, your voice is swell.
You're swell.
Real cream in the can.
Real can of the cream.
It's can of the cream. It's cream in the can, Barrett.
Can of the cream.
Bloody bushmouth.
Bushmouth. Spaghetti. I'm like talking like a person underground with a mouthful of marbles. Oh, underwater with a mouthful of marbles. You can't even say the sentence about people who can't. God. Maybe I should play Uncle Jed.
Yeah. We got Uncle Barrett right here.
Again, I'm gonna have to bleep that. All right. We got a review.
Okay. The only other interesting point I wanted to make was, much to my surprise and disgust, the movie had 3 sequels.
Yeah.
The Broadway Melody 1936 was the title. The Broadway Melody 1938 and the Broadway Melody 1940.
Yeah. There was also a remake in like the 60s or so. There was something else from the 60s.
This one let the movie die.
Now, interestingly, when you look up those movies on the internet, they're not direct sequels and they're not direct copies. They're just similar movies.
They're just trying to bankroll off the title because it won Best Picture, right?
Yeah,
clearly.
They have similar plots,
Ugh.
but they're not like, it's not a remake or anything like that. Just like, oh yeah, this movie was successful, let's make another one.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah. Money grab. Unlike this podcast.
Exactly. This is we're not doing it for the money, even though we make millions off of it. We're doing it for the love of cinema.
Yeah. I think at this point we must have around 300,000 listeners.
Oh, at least.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah.
Okay, but Barrett, tell me this. Give me 2 things that you liked.
I liked Uncle Jed.
Yeah, Uncle Jed was an interesting character. Yep.
Not explained at all, as you said.
I'll take that.
But I did like Uncle Jed. I enjoyed the fight scene.
Yep.
It was the most action to be in the whole movie.
Yep.
And it was really interesting to see the main character go in a modern movie who would sort of, the fight would go on for a while and then he'd come out triumphant. No, he got absolutely steamrolled.
Good. Because he was a real piece of shit. I know he kind of really got what he wanted in the end, but he was not a role model.
All of the men in this movie, apart from Uncle Jed,
Actually, fair point.
were pieces of shit.
Yeah. Yes, that's really the key takeaway.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we talked a lot about what we didn't like, so there's no point going there. What about you? Any questions?
No, what did you like about the movie? 2 things, come on.
Ooh. I really liked the early use of Technicolor.
Ooh, but you didn't know that existed until I told you.
Because it's not in the version we watched.
It was only one scene as well.
Yeah, that we didn't get to see.
Yeah.
Probably the most interesting part of the whole movie.
Yeah. Ooh, I do have one other point. I didn't
yeah?
have written down. It was right above my point of not much happened. So this was one of the first movies to include sound. I found this on the Google box. And subsequently, it took a lot of trial and error and a lot of takes to get the sound right.
What do you mean?
Well, they didn't have any experience recording movies with sound.
But hang on, when you say sound, so like the first movie Wings, when we watched it, the sound was added in, right?
Yes.
Because there's no dialogue. So you're saying this movie had sound and dialogue, and it was all like live recorded as they were recording the scenes.
Yeah. So
Yes,
recording
yes.
the dialogue,
Okay.
recording the singing,
Yep.
and the music in the background, it took them a lot of trial and error to get it right, and they would record, listen back and go, oh, that sounded terrible, let's try this setting. I imagine someone
Right.
behind a big panel of switches and knobs going, I don't really know what I'm doing. And just beep, bloop, 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 bloop. And
Until they got something that sounded alright.
yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And you know what? That part I can appreciate. Like the singing, dancing parts, I thought that was well executed.
Sure.
As much as Eddie was a piece of shit,
I think it was swell.
He could sing and he could dance.
I think it was swell.
Swell. I think it was quite swell.
It was a can of swell.
A can of swell. Cream in the can.
All right. I think we've got to wrap this up. This is dragging on.
Oh,
It wasn't good.
it wasn't good to conclude. Would not watch again. And I think that really ties in well now with where we're going with next. How many Barretts do you give it out of 5, Barrett?
I'm a hard toss between 0 and 0.5.
I don't think we can. Can we give it 0?
All right, let's rule out a 0 and I'll give it half a star.
Yeah, I'm giving it half a star. It was a real tough watch. I know if Mikey was here with us, he'd agree. It was tough. It was a tough watch. Even your mother-in-law, Belinda, who watched good sections of it too, she couldn't stand it either. And she's from a whole different generation and still thought it was terrible. And I think that makes us 100% right.
We can't be wrong
We can't be wrong.
because we don't know what we're doing.
So just to conclude, 1928 Academy Award for Best Picture winner, The Broadway Melody, the first musical to win it as well. Utterly terrible. Half stars for both me and Barrett. Would not watch again. The best part about it was the beer we drank doing the podcast review on the movie.
Yeah.
Excellent beer.
Yeah, Deeds Brewing, Oat Cream, Juice Train, Oat Cream Nipa. It was
Delicious.
fantastic.
That part was worth it, boy.
Yeah.
All right, tune in next episode. We're watching All Quiet on the Western Front.
Yes.
Yep, and then we're actually up to date.
I'm excited for that.
Oh yeah, let's do it. I
All
can't wait.
See you next time.
See you next time.